First of all, tell everybody your name.
My name is Travis Jones.
And what is your current occupation?
I work as an instructor, consultant, witness in the field of traffic and workplace safety.
How long have you been doing that?
Since off and on, including being a police officer since 1999 when I received most of my training.
As a police officer, did you also work in that capacity?
Yes.
And where was that?
I first started here in St. Louis City from 1995 to 1998. From 1998 till the end of 2009, I was with St. Charles County Sheriff's Department. During that time, I was trained as an accident reconstructionist and an AI investigator with the vehicle crash unit.
So what other kind of training have you gone through in order to become an accident reconstruction expert?
So I went through the basic accident investigation through the Missouri State Highway Patrol, then the advanced school, passed both of those courses, and then was sent to the accident reconstruction school out at the Missouri Safety Center at Central Missouri University. At that time, after receiving that, I went through more training, specific training toward making my own calculations and formulas, a physics course through Institute of Police Technology and Management, went through specific training on pedestrian investigations, bicycle investigations, motorcycles, commercial motor vehicle. I was trained in an early course on crash data retrieval, which is the black box on the vehicles, and then went through an analyst school and also went through instructor school to be able to teach other officers how to work with the crash data retrieval.
You just got back from Reno testifying in a case out there, right?
Yes.
Okay. And about how many times do you think you've been tendered and offered as an expert witness?
Counting time as a police officer, hundreds of times, if not more, as an expert in different fields.
Okay. Judge, we're offering this witness as an expert in the field of accident reconstruction.
Your objection?
You're asked to what you're doing witness.
Go ahead.
You may.
Mr. Jones, you said that you testified in a number of areas of expertise, right?
Yes.
Primarily, you testify as in DUI cases. Is that fair?
Correct. I do a lot of work in alcohol and drug intoxication.
You gave a list of cases in which you testified.
Yes.
Can you say, I couldn't find one case there where you testified as an accident reconstruction expert. Could you tell me which case on that list it
I
was?
couldn't recall back, but I have testified as an accident reconstruction, not only as an officer. I can give you the names and locations of the cases that I handled as an officer and was a reconstruction specialist.
As an
I can
officer,
also.
but you were last an officer.
So let me finish answering his question.
Yes, sir.
I can give the other cases where I testified as for accident reconstruction and calculations. Kansas and recognized as an expert out there in not Sedgwick County, but the county south of Wichita. Not sure if that case is on my list or not, but I know it's listed in my CV. I was recognized as an accident reconstructionist on that case. I've been deposed as an expert on civil cases, which I understand is once a deposition is given, you may be considered an expert.
Hold on. Finish his answer.
That was just my question. But
Okay. Well then, once he gets done.
Thank you.
Yes.
So no, the majority of cases listed on there are the DUI cases, but some of those DUI cases are manslaughter cases also.
But regardless of the charge, though, in the cases where you're a DUI expert, you're not reconstructing a crash. You're testifying about whether the officer properly performed DUI, a field sobriety test, or the other test related to it, right?
Difference. There are some cases where I have been called in, like this case, to work on just the accident reconstruction, and other cases where there's been an accident reconstructionist hired along with me, and we split the duties of the responsibility.
Okay. You were the last department you worked with the St. Charles County Sheriff's Department, is that right?
That's correct.
And that was in 2009, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. So that was the last time that you were employed in a role where you had responsibilities to reconstruct crashes, right?
No, as a consultant and working with attorneys, I've had to go back and reconstruct cases where there was no reconstruction done as part of the initial investigation. So, yes, I still do reconstructions, but as far as being called out to a scene like an officer does, only officers do that. I would have done that in 2009.
Okay. And so out of the list that you gave me of, I think it was maybe 100 cases, you can't say any of those cases you testified as an accident reconstructionist, but you can recall on the stand now testifying in Kansas once in court where the court accepted you as an expert in the field of accident reconstruction?
No, there's multiple cases I've testified as an accident reconstruction specialist, and those cases have been the civil cases. That list of cases, as I indicated at the end, that's not a complete list. I know I missed cases I've been involved in, but on my CV, there are the areas where I've indicated which jurisdictions have, and some have indicated me as an accident reconstruction specialist.
You recall receiving a subpoena from the circuit attorney's office before you were called to testify today, right?
Yes, sir.
And that subpoena asked for the complete file, including the materials that you relied upon reaching your opinion.
Judge, this is going beyond the voir dire about his qualifications. He can ask him those questions on cross-examination.
It's not your argument. It's going to how his methodology.
Let's see where it goes.
Okay, you
Yes,
received
sir.
a subpoena. In response to that subpoena, you provided a list of 61 equations from the Missouri State Highway Patrol for use in accident reconstructions, right?
Yes.
And then we spoke yesterday and today, and you said you didn't use any of those equations, right?
No, sir. I said I used a time-distance equation.
You said that you calculated the speed from video, right?
Correct, which would use a time-distance equation that's listed in that handout I gave you, sir.
And your report doesn't indicate any equation that you used, right?
No, it just lists out what the answers and the range that I came up with as far as speeds.
Okay. Your Honor, this time, let's say this witness is not qualified to testify in this field.
I'm going to disagree. He does meet the standard for an expert. Everything else is going to be up to the jury to decide the weight and value to give to it. Your witness?
So I asked you to come in and take a look at this case. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. And one of the things that you went through was information regarding the crash data recorders of both vehicles?
Yes, the data is part of the investigation done.
All right. And you actually had a copy of that was given to us that was printed out using some 22 software technology. Is that right?
Correct. It was using the cable that they had at the time, which was not the cable assigned to that car.
Relevance he's referring to, if this is not the CER data that's been admitted in the case.
But it's just to show his background and where it started, Judge, that's all.
It's
All
not.
right, well, if that's where, was he there for the new cable?
Yes.
All right. Sir, you can take us down the whole road then.
So you were there for the evaluation of that data from that first imaging, correct?
Correct. It was provided to me from when they began the investigation, the initial reports.
And one of the things you noticed was that they didn't actually use the correct equipment, right?
Object, Your Honor. Maybe approach. the jury can disregard.
I'm sorry. Adam.
All right, the objection was sustained, so the jury will disregard the previous conversation regarding cables. That'll be stricken from the record. You may proceed.
So what did you put in your report for the purposes of this case in your analysis?
There are several points I made after reviewing the police reports, the video, the black box data, the pictures. First of all is that there was a yield sign, and that yield sign had been violated by Daniel when he went through that intersection in the Audi. The second is that the intersection was a limited sight distance, and therefore drivers had to use extreme caution when going through it because of the limited sight distance, and it was documented in the report and the pictures. And the third point is dealing with the speeds of the vehicle. We found that the Audi was traveling at impacts was somewhere between 35 and 39 miles per hour, and that the Malibu was traveling between 30 and 35.
Judge, I would object to foundation at this point to that opinion because the witness has not explained how he derived the calculation.
I'm sure we're going to hear all about it.
So you gave a range of speeds is what you did?
Yes.
And that was based upon the analysis and the information that was given to you to try and do that, correct?
Yes, using the video, the crash data retrieval, the black box data, and also the police reports and police officers' investigations.
And that's all information that was provided to you from the state, right?
Through you, yes.
Okay. Thank you. I don't have any.
Ross?
Yes, mark for identification as State Exhibit 187. Sir, is that a copy of your report in this case?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Yes, it is.
Is it a fair and accurate copy of the report?
It seems to be yes.
Does it contain all of the opinions that you were discussing just now?
Yes.
Okay. Your Honor, just without admitting that report, I'd just like to publish portions for purposes of demonstrating and then asking the witness about bases for those.
Yep. All right, you may use it as a demonstrative.
The first point in your report, Mr. Jones, was that the CDR data for the Audi was not reliable because there were 3 deployment events. There were multiple deployments. There should only be 1 deployment, and the second and third events were identical in data. Did I read that correct?
This was on the report, yes.
As States Exhibit 29, I'll hand the witness that. This is a copy of the CDR report. Mr. Jones, question. At that point, there weren't timestamps for deployment events.
Correct. It's not dated.
Did you
time
notice
recorded.
that in this report, those deployment events are timestamped?
Yes, there was time. I'm
Okay.
sorry. What
My
are you
next
referring
point-
to? I'm not sure what you said.
Okay, you said that
Timestamps.
the data between events 2, and so this is from States Exhibit 29, 2 and 3 were identical. What we see for event 2,
Oh, you're talking about, okay, I know what you're talking about. Yes,
Okay.
you are correct.
it says time since initial event to current event, milliseconds, 324. And for the first, event 3, it says 0. Do you agree that those are different numbers?
I'm trying to reference in the package. Give me just 1 second. Are you looking at vehicle clock or, I'm sorry, I can't see that far into the screen. I'm going to make sure I'm following you correctly. Which one are you talking about?
I'm talking about the event 2 and event 3 that you said are identical. And I'm talking about the line where it says time since time from initial event to current event in milliseconds.
Correct.
That event 3 has 0 milliseconds, and that event 2 has 324 milliseconds.
Correct.
324 milliseconds is less than half a second, right?
That's correct.
And it only pre-crash data is recorded at half-second intervals.
Correct.
Right, okay. Just going to move on to point 2. Point 2, you said that St. Charles Street has, and 11th Street has obstructed use of the intersection. Is that essentially right? That's what this point has to do with the limited line of sight at that intersection?
Correct. It would require the
As
truck.
As a former sheriff's deputy, you're familiar with the Missouri Traffic Code and the law regarding a driver's obligation and yield sign,
Yes.
right? So, do you agree that at that point, I guess, have you reviewed this line of sight analysis that Tom Morris performed?
Yes, it was in the report.
Okay, would you agree that the Audi would not have had line of sight through the intersection at the point that it was applying 100% throttle according to the data in the airbag control module?
I would agree with that.
Okay. And then would you agree the law is that a driver approaching a yield sign shall, in obedience to the sign, slow down to a speed reasonable to the existing conditions, and if required for safety to stop, shall stop at clearly marked stop line, but if none, then at the point nearest the intersecting roadway where the driver has a view of approaching traffic on the intersecting roadway?
I would agree.
Okay. And to your point, your opinion was that Daniel Riley violated the yield sign, right?
Yes, you did.
Okay. Point 3, you came up with speed calculation, 35 to 39 miles per hour for the Riley vehicle, and Smith said 30 to 35 miles per hour, right?
Correct.
You're saying, when we talked about it, you said you calculated this by looking at the video to see at a time interval how many car lengths the vehicle moved. Is that fair?
The time it took for the Audi to, on the video, accelerate the 2 car lengths that were visible on the video. So it's an approximation. It's not an exact speed.
Okay. The video that you're talking about is the video from St. Charles Street, right?
Yes.
Okay. That video doesn't have line of sight all the way from where the Audi is parked at the curb to the intersection with 11th Street, right?
Correct.
And the Audi is accelerating that whole time, right?
Correct. It is
So
accelerated.
we don't know, for the point that's not covered by the camera, whether the Audi continued accelerating, right?
If we believe the EDR data, then it was accelerating as it continued through.
Right. If we believe the EDR data. But in order to believe your opinion, we have to believe that the EDR data is wrong for the Malibu and it's wrong for the Audi, right?
No. As I explained, part was also as part of the calculations on the Audi's speed, dealt with the fact is that on that Audi's EDR, it showed more than just the speed. It also showed that acceleration. It showed steering angle. So then using the video with the EDR data, that was where I was able to start to calculate the time distance speed at that point as it accelerated into the intersection.
Mr. Jones, I'm going to call your attention to the data first for the time of impact here for the Audi is 45 miles per hour. Do you agree that's what that CER data indicates at 0 time?
No, I disagree.
Okay.
You said it was the time of impact. What that 45 degrees is when it decided to deploy the airbag.
Okay.
So it's not,
Well, at half a second before it deployed the airbag, it indicates speed 42 miles per hour?
yes,
Okay. And you'd agree that's greater than the speed that you calculated for the Audi?
yes,
Okay. You agree that at half a second before the Malibu was commanded to deploy an airbag, the reported speed in the airbag control module was 27 miles per hour?
correct,
You agree that's lower than the speed you calculated for the Malibu?
yes,
So the data for those speeds would have to be wrong in the airbag control modules of 2 different vehicles for your calculations to be right?
no, sir. The Audi data for using the calculations, I used that EDR data to confirm the distances and times. That's why it came up to between 35 and 39, and we cannot assume that 45 is impact. At 45, we know it's going to be, that's when the airbag deployed. So then we use other
agree
evidence.
with these
Hold on,
speeds, then?
don't talk over each other, please.
Sorry, sir.
Let them finish.
You agree that the data from the airbag control modules is accurate then?
It's one of our things that we have to verify, so I verified it using time distance formula, yes.
Okay. So you agree, you wouldn't say there was anything wrong with the airbag control module data?
I think it's odd that we have 2 deployment events
Nice.
on there, but I would still say we are using the data.
Yes or no question? Do you
Yes,
agree?
if we're
Do you not
comparing it to the videos, I found very similar actions on the EDR versus the video. That would be consistent.
Okay. Mr. Jones, I'm going to show you what's marked as State Exhibit 190, and that's a black and white copy. Is that a chart that you prepared before testifying today?
I'm not trying to be mean. It's a diagram, not a chart.
Diagram.
I apologize. I'm not trying to correct you. But yes, it's a diagram.
Okay. And wound up that that diagram, I'm sure you provided to Mr. Deemer, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. You created that diagram?
Yes.
Okay. Didn't wind up being used today.
Sorry, what?
You
You're
didn't.
using it.
Okay.
I'm going to object. That's a
Enough.
comment about what I'm doing.
Okay, focus on your
Yes,
witness.
sir. Okay. So, is that a fair and accurate copy of the diagram that you created?
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you. Your Honor, without admitting this diagram, I'd like to just display it so that I can ask the witness questions about it.
You may publish it.
Okay. Here's a diagram that you created. You said you created this Saturday, right?
I believe it was on Saturday, yes.
Okay, that was after you created the report that we saw before, right?
Correct.
Okay, in this calculation, you have different speeds. Is that fair?
Yes, when I went back and did a new calculation on Saturday, yes.
Okay, and I'm understanding here you're plotting that in 1.5 seconds here, the Audi travels 16 to 20 feet while accelerating from 0 to 12 miles per hour.
Can I have a chance to have the exhibit in front of me?
Yes.
I apologize, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry if it's too small.
No, you're good. It's better than that. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Okay. So looking in the right side, the first point, we're interpreting this as the Audi's traveling in 1.5 seconds, 16 to 20 feet, while accelerating from 0 to 12 miles per hour.
Correct.
Okay. And then in 2 seconds, the Audi is traveling 150 feet while accelerating from 12 to 35 miles per hour.
35 is a minimum, so he at least achieved 35 miles an hour at the end of that distance. That would be the minimum that he was going. He would not have been going any slower when going into the intersection at 35.
It's actually impossible that the Audi would have been traveling 35 miles per hour, right?
Say that again, I'm sorry.
it's impossible that a vehicle traveling 35 miles per hour could travel 150 feet in 2 seconds.
Well, we're looking at what I know from the data that's achieved on the data and versus the time, seconds, and the acceleration. From the time it pulled out with the steering angle, if we're using the EDR data, believing is possible, he achieved that speed.
Mr. Jones, this is a serious case. You agree with that?
I agree.
Objection, Your Honor, he's arguing with the witness. That's improper.
Ask your question properly.
Okay. You took care in preparing your testimony. Is that fair?
That'd be fair.
Okay. You know how to convert miles per hour to feet per second, right?
Yes, it's on the calculation sheet.
Okay. And can you walk us through that? Could you convert 35 miles per hour to feet per second?
No, I don't have the sheet in front of me.
Okay. Well, maybe I can do it, and we'll see if you agree with me. We have 35 miles, 1 hour. Do you agree that's the first part of the calculation? You can step down if you can see that.
No, I would have to look at the calculation sheet for the changing it from miles per hour to feet per second. I'm not going to.
You can't say whether that's a fair representation of 35 miles per hour. It's 35 miles over 1 hour.
Can I look at the calculation sheet? I don't have a calculation sheet with me, but I did not memorize the formula. I do not want to comment on it until, unless I have my sheets in front of me, and I did not bring the sheet with me.
You bring the sheet with you, but when you were served with the subpoena, you said you didn't have any other, you didn't use any notes or anything to prepare your calculations, right?
No, I used the formula sheet that I gave you.
Well, just bear with me for a minute. Would you agree there's 5,208 feet in 1 mile?
Yes.
Okay. Would you agree there is 60 minutes in 1 hour?
Yes.
Okay. Would you agree that there is 60 seconds in 1 minute?
That'd be correct.
Okay. Would you agree that 60 times 60 is 3,600?
That would be correct.
Okay. Okay. Now the next one is going to be hard. 35 times 5,280, right?
I'm not going to do that in my head.
Not doing it in your head. Okay. Well, what I calculated was 184,800, and then I divided those two, and I got 51.33 feet per second. So, do you disagree that 35 miles per hour is 51.33 feet per second?
No, that would be the velocity formula.
Okay. Would you agree that if you only had 2 seconds and you're traveling 35 miles per hour, you could not possibly cover 150 feet?
Then that would mean that the EDR data was incorrect.
Well, it means that your calculation in that chart is incorrect.
Well, the data from the EDR is what was used for the chart, so that would then calculate that the EDR data was incorrect in its calculations based upon time and distance formula. I'm not disputing. I'm just saying 35 miles an hour would be that minimum speed that Mr. Riley was going when he was in the intersection.
Do you want to show us how you calculated your speed?
No, sir. I didn't bring my calculations with me.
Okay, no further questions, sir.
Any redirect?
Tell us a little bit about, I know you were asked, why do you think event 2 and 3 are the same event in that EDR?
Comparing the speed data, the steering, the acceleration, the braking, not the times, but looking at the exact data that it copied from the vehicle. It's the exact same speeds and distance, I believe, when I looked at the two. Usually there's one deployment event, and then there's non-deployment events, unless we have a front and side airbag deployments that are different in the sequence of events. In this case, event 2 and 3 were both side airbag deployments. And if you look at the data, it looks like their speeds are exactly the same when they copy, so they're almost they are a mirror image of each other when copies to speed.
And when it came to you using some of the data, trying to calculate time distance, did you rely on any of that Leica information that was generated by Officer Moran?
No, I relied on the video and I relied on the EVR.
So let me ask you, the Leica information, do you know what a Leica is?
Yes.
If the Leica information is incorrect and people are vetting information based upon Leica measurements,
outside scope.
Overruled. You can answer.
and people are basing or trying to vet speeds and distances against Leica information that is incorrect, would their calculations be faulty or somehow not correct?
Judge calls for speculation.
He can answer if he knows.
Does it? Your Honor, the witness testified he didn't use that calculation and can't even explain how he.
Well, let me ask you, I'll start over. Have you used Leica information in the past?
I've used the laser measurements, yes.
And if the laser measurements are improperly performed or improperly related, then using that information to try and vet other information would lead to a faulty result. Would you agree?
Yes, any information that's put in to verify other information is only as good as the information collected.
So, for instance, if there was maybe, and this is hypothetically speaking, of course, there was an object that was supposed to be measured by a Leica measurement device.
Judge, you're outside scope and it calls for speculation.
It does call for speculation, we praise.
Hypothetically speaking, if there's information that is visible at a scene but not demonstrated in a Leica measurement, it may indicate that the Leica was not properly used.
Your Honor, I think this is also outside the scope of the report.
He can answer if he knows anything about Leica in this particular case.
I'm sorry. The scale measurements that are made at the scene, if they're used into any computations or verifications, they have to be accurate. Otherwise, there is a margin of error that would occur during those calculations.
Thank you.
Any recross?
No, Your Honor.
Thanks, witness be excused.
Yes.
Sir, you're free to go.
Thank you, Your Honor.